Coach, that was a great win on Saturday over a very good Howard football team. They had so much talent in that offensive backfield with Quentin Williams and Hunter, their running back, and the defense was stout for Robert Morris. And even when you fell behind early in the fourth period of play, there was no give up. Speaking of that, let's talk about what was happening on the sideline. Because you either had a lead or the game was tied all game long until the fourth quarter. So what was the mindset on the sideline when you knew you had to come from behind to win that game?
Well, the great thing about it, Chris, is in 2019, there wasn't a game we didn't come from behind except for the Duquesne game. I think it's the only one. So our guys always have the mindset that we're going to play 60-plus minutes. And what it means by 60-plus minutes, if it goes into overtime, we got to make sure we're completing that too. So our guys always have a mindset of making sure we play four quarters and beyond. So they're always ready for it. They're always ready for it. We're never out of the game. That's what we try to convince them of. We're never going to be out of this game. If we just continue to do what we're capable of doing, let's get it done. The thing that was probably bothering me about the entire game, we weren't executing the way we thought we were capable of executing throughout the game. There were times we did it good here, get it good there, but it wasn't a consistent execution throughout the game. So as we start going in the fourth quarter, things start clicking for us a little bit better. Things start happening for us. When we scored that touchdown and we went for the 2-point conversion, then we had to hold them, and then we had to get a first down in order to seal the game. So things started clicking pretty good for us.
Yeah, we'll talk about the defense in just a little bit. I want to talk about the offense, though. It showed power when it needed to. It showed finesse when it needed to. And there were some big plays in that game.
Yeah, it was some huge plays. And the thing that's most important to us is exactly what we talked about last week, Chris. We're trying to establish the run. We're trying to make sure our running backs are touching the ball on a regular basis, trying to make sure we're getting the yards that we need to establish the run. Because the more you establish the run, it's going to open up for guys like Dre. It's going to open up for guys like Chris, for DeMont, and all those receivers, and Moss, the tight end. It's going to open up for those guys because we've established the run. So the run is going to be big for us. We're going to continue to try to do that this week also. And our running backs are doing a good job. You know, AJ did a great job. He got 107 yards. John Wynn did a good job. Those guys are doing a real good job. And George had to run it a couple of times also. And the thing about George, he has that deceiving speed. Doesn't look fast, but he's making it happen. So that's the great thing about George.
Yeah, that Statue of Liberty play at the goal line was pretty sweet.
Exactly.
That looked old school.
Exactly. He made me a little nervous, especially on a 2-point play. I'm like, I know he can get in there. It's like he wanted to make a move in order to get in there. So he let the guy catch him and then jumped inside. I'm like, George, let's not do that next time. Let's just go to the pylon and put the ball in the end zone.
Let's talk a little bit about your defensive play and how you felt the defense stood up. Again, a tough ball game, back and forth the whole game. And those guys look pretty stout out there, as I said.
Started off like we always talk about, Chris. The tackling wasn't where we wanted it to begin with. Some of our fits weren't there. But as the game went on, our guys started tackling a whole lot better. Big, huge interception by Lorenzo on that out route when we really, really needed it. We needed a turnover. We'd like to have more turnovers, but the fact we got that when we really needed it was important. And we got the stops we needed when we needed the stops, and our defensive backfield did a great job.
Lorenzo looked like Ray Thomas on that play.
Lorenzo did look like Ray Thomas on that play. We may start calling Smoke Jr.
There's a lot of shoes to fill right there.
I hear you. And the other great thing about it, our defensive line got out there pretty good. You know, you have 6 sacks. That's important. You know, you put that kind of pressure on the quarterback, getting him out of his pocket, getting him out of his comfort zone. Our guys did a great job of doing that.
That was actually what I was going to ask about, was the defensive line play, because I mean, as we see, you know, with the big Pittsburgh team here, whenever you lose the battle in the trenches, you don't tend to win a lot of football games like the Steelers have been doing, you know. But you guys' defensive line has been phenomenal. It was phenomenal last week. I think you mentioned 6 sacks, but I think you guys also had 5 tackles for loss and 4 QB hits too, I believe.
Well, the thing about it, we got a veteran group. We got Soupy, we got Azan, we got Bryce. We got older guys out there. We don't have a whole lot of young guys like we had when we first got here. And those guys have learned to play well together. And Coach Curry's doing a good job of getting after them. And Coach Plunge's scheme is helping us a ton also.
Yeah, and then offensively, I mean, Elijah Jackson, obviously the big ball hawk in the offense, his first 100-yard rushing game this season. Granted, you know, it was a tough opponent. It was an FBS team in the first week. But what do you expect for him going forward?
We expect the same thing. Probably the most important yards, those last 3 he got when he got that first down. Those are probably the most important yards this guy trying to seal that win. He didn't play the first game. You know, he was one of our COVID guys the first game, so he didn't play the first game. So actually, like I said, that was the first week that we actually had everybody together. You know, like I said before, if you remember, not one of our wide receivers had ever played in a college game when we played Central Michigan. Not one of our running backs ever played in a college game we played. Not one of our tight ends had ever played in a college game we played Central Michigan. So all those guys were new. So that was Elijah's first game back. So for him to come back and get 107 yards was huge.
And what about the play with George Martin? I mean, obviously you guys were built through the run that game, but I mean, he played very well with his 2 touchdown passes. And, you know, on top of that, talk about the play of Hicks too in the week and last week.
Well, Dre didn't play that first game, so it was good to see him get out there and do what he did earlier in the spring when we had those 3 games back in April, May, and July, or April, whatever days we had those games back in the spring. He did a good job for us back then. He just continued what he's doing, and I think Gabe hit it right on the nail right on the head when he said George is a 5th-year senior. George knows what we're looking for. He's in a great position. He knows how we want to run this thing, and he's doing a great job of running our offense right now.
Moving on, just your thoughts, general thoughts before we get into more detailed questions about NC, about your opponent this week.
Well, North Carolina A&T, I've had the luxury of playing against them before. When I was at Hampton University back in 2009 and 2013, great football team. They were a hard-nosed football team. You probably won't remember that coach. The coach was on the Steelers back in the early 80s. He was a cornerback who came out of Mississippi Valley, the same school that Jerry Rice came out of. And he's a hard-nosed coach. So there are times that they're going to try to stop the run. That the most important thing to them is stopping the run, and the most important thing to them on offense is establishing the run. And they're a downhill power team. They're going to play some 21 personnel. They're going to play some 20 personnel, something we haven't been used to seeing because most of the teams that we played are spread teams, and most of the teams nowadays are spread teams where they got one back in the backfield. Not A&T. A&T has 2 backs in the backfield. They have a full back sometimes. And they're trying to bloody your nose, and they're a good football team. They took Duke to the wire. They played Duke extremely hard. They've beaten East Carolina in the past. So this is a great football team that's a well-coached football team also.
Yeah, I was actually going to follow up. Is there anything that you picked up from watching the highlights, at least especially that first half against the Duke? I mean, you said they only trailed by a touchdown at half against Duke, and they were up early in the game.
Well, that's when we realize how well they run the ball. When you watch them against Duke, and you watch them against Furman, you watch them against North Carolina Central, you see how well these guys run the ball. You see how they're basically a 3-man game with those running backs in the backfield, number 30, number 33, and number 25. Those guys are good running backs.
What's the biggest challenge, Bernard? Is it stopping the running game? Obviously, they have Jalen Fowler playing quarterback right now, completing 56% of his passes, but it seems like they do run the ball darn well.
Well, that's the most important thing. Reason he's completing those passes because the run game's so good. Everybody's trying to make sure they put enough guys in the box to shut that run down. They're a great running team. They really are. And their offensive line, actually, I know their offensive line coach. Him and I coached together back when I first started my career at James Madison University. Ron Madison, Coach Madison's a great coach, and he's done a good job. That offensive line is well coached, and they work well together. Like I said, stopping the run is going to be the key.
Coach, I'll be calling the game for ESPN3. I appreciate you taking some time.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the veteran group. It seems like both A&T and your squad have a ton of 5th-year guys, seniors, even some 6th and 7th-year guys playing in this one. How helpful is that as a coach who, you have 4 years under your belt there, but still to be able to have all those veterans around to try and get through this season, knowing that there might be some ups and downs still because of COVID?
Well, I guess that's one positive of COVID. The fact that we have so many veterans,
right?
It's huge. I mean, when you have guys that have played in your system for 3 and 4 years, guys that have played together for 3 and 4 years, those things are huge because now they know the ins and outs of each other. They know what this veteran is going to do. Like, for example, even though Dre just got here last fall, him and George have been working together now for almost 2 years. So now they kind of fill each other out. Our defensive line, Izon, Soupy, Bryce, Matt Holmes, those guys have been playing together for the last 3 years. So now for them to go into a 5th year together, it's huge for us. So there's no doubt with the experience that we have and the experience that they have, we're going to lean on that experience. I'm sure they are also.
Coach, you know this from coaching at Hampton. Playing at an HBCU is a little bit different. There are some different elements that you have to deal with. What are you telling your guys as they prepare for that type of environment?
Well, the atmosphere is going to be different. There's no doubt about that. Really haven't talked to them yet. I'm just going to wait till Friday to bring that up to let them know exactly what they're going into because all the HBCUs that we played have been here. They've been here at Robert Morris, so it's a little bit different atmosphere. So I'll let them know that, hey, guys, it's going to be a little crazier, a little more fun going on. So just make sure you don't get distracted about the things that are going on around you in the stands.
You mentioned the run game the other day. Obviously, Elijah had a fantastic game, 107 yards. A&T only allowed 52 yards to Central on the ground. And under Coach Washington, they've been pretty stout on the running game. How do you try and find a hole to make something happen on the ground?
Well, that's the challenge for our veteran offensive line. And that's the thing that we've told them because just like you talked about, those are the veterans we're really going to lean up front. Those guys up front are going to really have to create those holes for AJ to hit him the way he needs to because – like you said, I think since Coach Washington's been there, they haven't been out of the top 20 in rushing defense since he's been there, maybe once. And so they're going to stop it. They're going to do what they need to do to stop the run. That's important to them. They're going to keep 6 in the box. They're going to make sure you don't run the ball up. So we got to make sure they understand the importance of that. Go ahead, Ray.
Thanks, Coach. Yeah, I think when me and Chris was talking at the end of the broadcast was just about the identity. You know, I know this is the second game. It was a big win, obviously, at home. From your perspective, what are the teammates talking about? What's the identity of the team? You know, you came out, you ran, you established what you talked about last week with the run game. You did that. You had a senior quarterback who stepped up, threw the ball when needed, protected the ball, stepped up as I believe he's a redshirt senior in critical moments. Where you seeing, or maybe the identity hasn't been identified yet, but what is the identity of the team per se at this juncture of the third game in the season, or second actually being played?
Well, to be honest with you, Smoke, it's probably the fact that they're competing. When I named those guys I named in Central Michigan that hadn't played in a college game, we went out there and those guys still competed, and they want to get better. So I think our view on our team is we want a team that's going to compete for 60-plus minutes. And that's the identity that they have, and that's what they're trying to hone into and help them understand that that's what we did back in 2019 in order to go 7-5. We competed for 60-plus minutes to make sure that we've secured our victories the way we needed to. We had to compete beyond. So we're a team that's going to compete. We're a team that's going to get after it. And we're trying to also build that tough guy mode. We want to make sure we're tough, make sure we're fighting. We're fighting over and over and over. So go ahead, Spence.
Coach, this will be the first full go-around in the Big South for you and your team. What are you noticing are some of the differences between the Big South compared to the NEC?
Speed. I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say that there was no speed in the NEC because there was speed, but overall team speed is a lot more in the Big South than it was in the NEC. You had a few players here and there that could outrun you. You got a whole defensive line for North Carolina A&T that could outrun a lot of people. This defensive line, you watch these guys get off the ball, they're phenomenal. I mean, the way they get off the ball, and if you're calling the broadcast, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These guys, get their butts in the air, get their hand in the ground. They're trying to fire off the ball. You also remember this is where Tariq Cohen came from. So this team has speed. That's the thing about it. So speed is probably the biggest thing that I've noticed between the NEC and the Big South. Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, just that was actually going to be one of my questions, but the other one, but just a lot of football today. I mean, it's not played with the run game. It's just the way the game has changed. It's more quarterback based, more passing based.
Well, I think you're talking more NFL, to be totally honest with you. I mean, I think college is like that, but not as much as it is in the NFL. I think with college football still leans on the run. I mean, if you sit back and you watch some of these guys that are running the ball, I mean, you don't get first-round picks out of Alabama that are running backs because they're not running the ball. So I think it depends on where you are. I think teams lean on the run. You watch Clemson, their running game isn't as good as it was when Etienne was there. And Etienne was one of the top there is. So it all depends on, I think, where you're all over, to be totally honest with you. And we're going to definitely lean on our running game because we got to get it established. In order to get your quarterback in the rhythm that he needs to be in, I think you have to establish the run game. You have to be able to do play action pass. You have to be able to do RPOs. Those things are a lot bigger, I think, in the college game. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, obviously, and for you guys and the it was a very good connection between George and Andre and Elijah. And DeAndre not playing Elijah. How important is to be on the right page so quickly on the first game of the season for that?
It was extremely important, and I think it took a while. I think that's why we were kind of like finding ourselves in the first quarter, because it took a while for those guys to mesh together. We had all new receivers starting. We had a new running back starting. We had a new tight end starting. We had 2 new safeties starting. We had 2 new defensive tackles starting in that game. So it took a while for that to get together. So it's important those guys play together and continue to bust their behinds. Go ahead, Spence.
Coach, to go back off of Logan's point and your response, do you feel like in this game there are 2 run-to-pass teams that are playing against each other?
Yes. Yeah, I do feel that way, because I've told Coach LeVar this on several occasions. We definitely have to run the ball in order to establish the pass. I really feel that way. And there's no doubt that that's exactly what North Carolina A&T is going to do, because like I said, they have 20 personnel. They have 21 personnel. Other than option, those 2 things are what am I looking for? Unicorns. They're unicorns nowadays. Those formations are unicorns nowadays in college football, because most of them are 1-backs. You hardly ever see 2-back offenses unless you're going against an option team. And this team is not an option team. This team is a downhill power, counter, ISO. They're trying to bloody your nose when they're playing. They got a fullback, number 46, who enjoys it. I mean, he enjoys coming downhill and running through a defensive lineman who's trying to, spill the block or trying to box the block. He enjoys blocking people. So it's going to be a different type of game for us. That's why we've been in full pads all week.
Okay, good to know. Chris, and just so you know, Coach mentioned that Coach Washington played for Pittsburgh and was at Mississippi Valley State with Jerry Rice. He'll also tell you that he didn't let Jerry Rice catch too many passes on him. So, that he, Jerry was a younger guy and he was pretty tough on him. So in case you need to work that in.
Competition at every level, Spencer.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely. Coach, the feeling in the locker room after the game, after the win over Howard last week, obviously there was jubilation. And, a lot of the football alums told me after the ball game how proud they were of the football team for the victory, but even more so that so many of them came out to the memorial service for Coach Walton. And it was so great seeing them in the stands with you after the ball game. And a couple of them asked me to pass that along to you.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think it's important that we represent the guy that started this program. Coach Walton started this thing from the scratch, and he made it a championship football team. And I think it's up to us as a coaching staff, but also as a team, to honor him in every way that we can.
Coach, who are you looking for to have a breakout game this week that maybe has not had their full legs under them or just hasn't had that moment yet?
I just want the offense and defense to play well together, to be totally honest with you, Spence. I'm not looking for one guy to try to do this, one guy to try to do that. I always tell you, that's the reason they call it a football team. We want to make sure our team is getting where they need to be. I want us to compete for 40, 60 plus minutes. I want us to compete offensively and defensively, especially up front. If you say one guy, no, but I want our D-line to establish the line of scrimmage. I want our offensive line to establish the line of scrimmage. So we had to pick anyone. I say I want O-line and D-line to really get it going.
And just to follow up on that, I'm sorry, Raymond, but your squad also is 8th in the nation in penalties per game, fewest penalties per game. With how disciplined your squad has been, how important is that as you continue through the year? And have you discussed that with your squad?
I think it's extremely important. We always talk to them about the fact that we can play clean games. If you look at last week, we got one holding call on the offense in the first quarter. We never got another. Defensively, the 2 face masks we got, you can't tell a defensive end to slow down and not reach for the quarterback. It was a situation where it happens. So they haven't been dumb penalties. So we got to make sure they understand you guys are playing discipline, you're playing together, and you're playing hard, and those things are important. Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach. Just seeing the energy on the sidelines after the win and during the win. Obviously, momentum is always going to shift. Who do you believe as your leaders on your team, really keeps the pulse, keeps everyone engaged, and like you said, everybody's, all men to the ball, all hands on deck approach. You guys are really, how can I put it? You're playing for each other. you know, and it really does seem as that you're building a team and a family environment. Who's that go-to player that you can count on to make sure that the energy is where it needs to be and everyone is even keel, even when you're down? You know, you can
I
depend
think
on
there are different aspects to that, Smoke, to be totally honest with you. The obvious choices are Nelio Bazzacco and George Martin. Those are two the guys in the middle of the field. You know, George being the quarterback and Nelio being our middle linebacker. Those are two obvious guys. But I guess the two guys that everybody looks to make a play or to do something exciting is probably Garrett Fairman. You know, I think for Garrett's a huge part of our defense. He does a great job. He keeps the energy going. He's exciting. He loves the game of football. And Dre, we always look for Dre to do something big. You know, but the other guy that's steady and we look for him to run somebody over, even though he only weighs about 125 pounds, is AJ. I mean, AJ's always running people. I don't know how he does it. I mean, he's probably the smallest running back I've ever seen just truck people before in my life. And he trucked another guy from Howard. I'm like, how does he do this? But he runs with great pad level. So there's certain things we look for. But those are the guys. If you were to ask someone, I'd say it'd be Garrett Fairman, Dre Hicks, and AJ. Those are the guys that we really want to see jump out. But, you know, and the other guy that everybody loves to watch play our entire team is Soupy. You know, Soupy is like a bad man on the field. He's getting double teamed and he's still ripping through guys, and the guys fight through anything. All he says is, yes, coach. That's it. You don't get anything. Soupy, you got to get right. Yes, coach. That's all he does. And that's the great thing about him. Great young man. Go ahead, Logan.
Yeah, just to, you know, go back to, I mean, you mentioned the preparation this week and you guys full pads, you know, because they're a physical team. But, you know, we also touched on how you guys both have very similar identities, you know, strong run game, strong defensive line play, strong shutting down the run. So I guess my question is, when it comes to preparing for, you know, a physical team like that, but also a team that, you know, has a very similar identity to your team, is it a little bit easier to hone that message across, or is it a little bit tougher in the sense that you're going to have to beat them in the way that they also beat their opponents?
I think it's, I'd say it's a little, I wouldn't say it's easy. I think it's just a preparation thing. When you show them film, actually showing them how physical they are, that makes them understand the mentality that they're going to need in practice that week. So when we put on full pads, they knew, okay, the mentality is a little different this week. We got to get a little more physical. I'm not saying the other teams we played weren't physical. I'm saying when you have a spread offense, it's totally different than when you have two backs in the backfield running downhill. You have a guard pulling and a fullback just kicking out on the edge. That's totally different than having zone, inside zone, outside zone, and things like that. So we want our guys to understand. So as we showed them film, and once they put on full pads, they understood, okay, the mentality's got to be different. This team's going to be tough. This team's going to try to drive the ball down your throat. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, on Saturday, like obviously there's like big names like Jamar Chicago and Bazzacco and all of them. But what can you say about Ricardo with his 2 sacks last Saturday?
Ricardo's a centerpiece, but Ricardo's like the silent assassin. He doesn't say much. I call him silent rage. He's one of those guys who kind of sit back, but he's getting better each week. The crazy thing about it, he's a redshirt sophomore. You know, we still have him for 4 more years because of COVID, but he's a redshirt sophomore who transferred from Florida State, and he's been good for us ever since he's gotten here. So he continues to get better. He continues to play better, and he just gets after it. He's one of those guys. We always look for him if something to happen, but he's also, him and Fairman play the same position, so we're also alternating those guys in and out. So Fairman's kind of the voice, and Ricardo's kind of the quiet guy.
Bernard, I just wanted to get back to talking a little bit about the offensive scheme. And the thing is, you have so many veterans up on the offensive line. The tight ends are younger kids. Let me have your perception of how they're coming along right now and how they're starting to gel with the older guys.
Well, Chris, I don't know if they're younger. They're younger as in experience. They're not younger as in age. Like Moss is a junior. He's a transfer from UNC Charlotte. Dylan Smith's been here, but he hasn't been playing because he's been playing behind Gonzo and playing behind, Steve and those guys. He hasn't really gotten on the field. And obviously, Cupchella and Mason Miller, those are 2 freshmen, redshirt sophomore and a freshman coming in. But those guys are learning to gel. Dylan is kind of coming to his own. Since those guys have graduated, we've leaned on him a little bit more, so he's kind of coming to his own. Moss is finally getting some playing time. When he transferred from UNC Charlotte, he wasn't playing a whole lot, so he's finally getting some playing time. More plays last week than he probably played his entire career at UNC Charlotte. So those guys are slowly coming together, and Coach Gallen is doing a great job of teaching those guys how to block. making sure they're where they need to be at. Because until they can block, they can't catch many passes. So that's how we look at those guys. We want to make sure you're a blocker, and then you can catch the passes. So we're slowly working those guys in, but they're doing a great job.